When I was 17, my parents left our town without warning. No goodbye, just a note on the table. You'll manage. I lived behind a junkyard, worked as a janitor, taught myself everything from library books. 12 years later, after I built a company from nothing, my sister showed up with a smile and a request. That's when I realized they didn't miss me. They just needed money. When I think back to that night, I still remember how quiet the house was. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the kind that presses against your ears, like something's wrong, but you can't quite say what. I was 17, just getting off my shift at the co-op down the road. I remember tossing my bike on the porch and stepping through the front door, expecting the usual smell of Dad's coffee and whatever frozen dinner Mom nuked that night. Instead, there was nothing. The furniture was gone. The photos, the couch, the kitchen table with the broken leg we kept propped up with a phone book, all of it, just gone. My footsteps echoed against the wood floors like I didn't belong there. I called out, "Mom." Nothing. "Dad." Still nothing. I walked from room to room, expecting to see them jump out and yell, "Surprise," like it was some weird family prank. But the rooms were stripped bare. Even my bedroom was empty except for the mattress they'd left behind. No posters, no clothes, no dresser, just a yellow piece of legal paper on the floor. For words, scribbled in Dad's rushed handwriting. "You'll manage." That was it. No explanation. No goodbye. "My name is Mason. I'm 17. I live in what's left of my family's old farmhouse outside of Jackson, Tennessee, at least for now. Or I did. At first, I thought maybe there was a mistake. Maybe they'd be back. Maybe they left in a hurry for some emergency. I stayed there for 3 days, surviving off peanut butter and half a loaf of bread I found in the kitchen drawer. I slept on the floor, listened for the sound of the truck pulling back into the driveway. Nothing. On the 3rd day, old Mrs. Caldwell from next door stopped by. She stood on the porch, squinting at me like she wasn't sure who I was. "They didn't tell you?" she asked. "Tell me what?" "They sold the place. Moved out last week. Said they were headed to Ohio. Thought you went with them." I didn't say anything. I just stared at her. Like if I looked confused enough, maybe she'd laugh and say she was joking. "They sold the house," I finally said. She nodded, lips pursed. "New folks coming in Monday. You might want to start packing." I didn't even have anything to pack. That weekend, the new owners showed up, some couple from Memphis looking for a quiet life. They were polite enough, but the man looked uncomfortable when he told me I had to leave by sundown. I didn't argue. I just nodded, grabbed the backpack I'd stuffed with what little I had left, and walked off the property. I couch surfed for a few nights. Spent 2 nights in Zach's parents' garage. One in a girl's basement I barely knew from school. I knew I was wearing out my welcome. On Friday, I took what was left of my last paycheck, $98.17, and rented a rusted-out trailer behind Ray's junkyard on Route 6. The landlord didn't ask questions, just handed me a key and pointed to the one with the crooked antenna. The place smelled like rust and mildew. The shower barely worked, and the door didn't lock right. But it was mine. And after a week of being nowhere, of belonging to no one, that meant something. The power didn't last long. The electric bill was still in my dad's name, and they shut it off 2 days later. I washed up in the sink with water I heated on the stove. Ate cold beans from the can. Wrote down every single dollar I spent in a notebook I found in the junkyard's office. That was the first time I realized I was alone. No phone calls. No letters. No explanations. They just vanished. Took my sister, took the life I knew, and left me with 4 words on a scrap of paper like it meant something. "You'll manage." And maybe I would. But not because of them. The first job I got after the trailer was as a janitor. It was at the old Edgewood Mall, the one they stopped updating sometime around 1998. Half the stores were boarded up. The escalators didn't work. The lights flickered like a horror movie set. But the pay was cash, and the manager, a guy named Daryl, didn't care that I didn't have ID. He just squinted at me one night while I stood at the back loading dock with a backpack slung over my shoulder and said, "You willing to mop bathrooms without whining?" "Yes, sir." He tossed me a key ring and pointed to the service hallway. "Midnight to 6. You get 1 break. Don't steal the cinnamon rolls." That was it. No paperwork. No questions. I cleaned bathrooms that hadn't seen a customer in days. Scrubbed dried gum off linoleum floors in the food court. Hauled leaking bags from the trash bins out back. The mall speakers still played soft jazz over the intercom, like it hadn't noticed it was dying. Some nights, I worked alone. Other nights, Daryl would shuffle in and out of the manager's office, drinking lukewarm coffee and arguing with the vending machine. "You fall asleep on the job, Mason, I'll dock your pay." "I don't sleep," I told him, which wasn't a lie. Not much, anyway. I washed my face in a janitor's closet with a utility sink and paper towels. I used the same corner to rinse out my t-shirts, hanging them overnight on the yellow wet floor signs. I kept my few possessions, a second pair of jeans, a pocket knife, an old paperback I'd found in my backpack, stashed in the cleaning supply cart. I ate whatever was left behind at the food court. Day-old pretzels. Half a muffin someone forgot. One night, I found 2 sealed chicken salad sandwiches in the Subway fridge. The place had been closed for a week, but nobody bothered to unplug anything. I ate one that night. The other one I saved for the next. Daryl wasn't friendly, but he noticed things. Sometimes he'd drop a couple bucks on the break room table and say nothing. Other times, he'd hand me his leftover fries and mutter, "Too much salt," even though they were still warm. Once, I fell asleep during my shift. I'd been cleaning the second-floor bathrooms and sat down just for a minute. The next thing I knew, Daryl was nudging my shoulder with his boot. "You breathe." I blinked. "Yeah, sorry." He grunted. "Get up. You look like death." Instead of firing me, he handed me a paper cup of vending machine hot chocolate and let me sleep in the security room for 20 minutes. It was the closest thing to kindness I'd had in a while. When I wasn't working, I went to the public library across town. They had AC, clean bathrooms, and no one asked questions if you kept quiet. I sat for hours reading books on personal finance, survival, anything that felt like it might help. I read about budgeting, compound interest, the importance of a credit score. Stuff no one ever taught me at school or at home. It became a routine. Work at night, learn during the day. I started keeping a notebook with everything I picked up. What bills cost. What food I could stretch. Which grocery stores left unsold bread on the loading docks at close. I memorized bus schedules, dumpster locations, and the names of every staff member at the shelter, even though I never stayed there. Not unless I had to. After 3 months, I had enough saved in an envelope under my mattress to buy a prepaid phone. It didn't do much, call, text, nothing fancy, but it made me feel less invisible. The next step was an ID. That was harder. I had no birth certificate, no social security card, no one to vouch for me. But a librarian named Carol helped me piece it together. She asked around, made calls to the state office. Said I reminded her of her nephew, who disappeared into meth country. She never said it with judgment, just a sigh. Like she'd seen too much. Eventually, I got a state ID. Took almost 6 weeks. When it came in the mail, forwarded to the library under their community hold program, I stared at the plastic card for a long time. Name, Mason R. Lane. DOB, August 3rd. Height, 5 feet 11 inches. Eyes, brown. Just seeing it printed out like that made me feel real again. I opened a savings account the next day. Minimum balance required, $25. I put in 50. The teller gave me a brochure and a smile like I just graduated college. That night at work, I cleaned a spilled milkshake under the old arcade machines and caught my reflection in the metal wall. I looked tired, thinner than I remembered. But I was standing. I was working. I was figuring it out. I didn't need my family to survive. And for the first time in my life, I believed that. It started with a rolled-up blueprint and a guy in khakis. I was mopping near the east wing of the mall, the part they still rented out as office space, when a man in his 30s waved me down. I thought maybe I'd left a wet patch, or he needed the bathroom code. But instead, he asked, "Hey, you know anything about computers?" I shrugged. "I know enough not to break him." He chuckled. "Can you skin something for me?" That's how I met Eric. He worked for a local architecture firm that had rented out 2 small units in the old Sears wing. Apparently, they just landed a job restoring a historic post office, and they had piles of old blueprints to digitize. His assistant had called out sick. The scanner was acting up, and Eric was desperate. I followed him back to the office. He showed me a stack of oversized plans that looked like they'd been pulled from someone's attic. "All I need is for you to scan them clean, save them in PDF format, and name the files by year and address," he said, typing something on his phone. "Can you do that?" I looked at the scanner, then the folder system on his desktop. "Yeah, I can figure it out." He paid me $50 cash for 3 hours of work. Slid it across the desk like it was nothing. "You're quiet," he said as I packed up. "But you get things done." 2 days later, he asked if I was free again. That one gig turned into a second, then a third. I kept cleaning at night and scanned plans during the day. Eric started passing me small jobs, retouching water-damaged drawings, organizing folders, typing out legend keys. When I didn't know how to do something, I looked it up at the library or asked Carol. One night, Eric handed me a flash drive and said, "You ever use Revit?" I hadn't. By the end of the week, I'd watched 12 hours of free tutorials and practiced on an old laptop Daryl said I could borrow if I didn't get any Cheetos in the keyboard. I stayed up most nights teaching myself drafting software, layer management, cloud storage, and file conversions. I learned the difference between a load-bearing wall and decorative trim. I didn't just scan anymore. I started reconstructing digital versions of the plans. At 23, I filed for a business license, Lane Digital Archiving. It sounded fancy, but it was just me in the corner of a coffee shop, borrowing Wi-Fi, and running a refurbished laptop with half the keys missing. Still, I made it official. Paid the state filing fee in quarters and crumpled bills. Within a year, I had 5 clients. By 25, I upgraded to a real laptop and rented a co-working space downtown. I started hiring part-time help, a graphic design student named Tony and a retired librarian who only wanted quiet, air conditioning, and no drama. I kept everything organized: expenses, taxes, contracts. Every dollar that came in, I tracked. I didn't touch my savings unless I had to. I set reminders to pay bills early. I learned to say no. By 27, I owned a small firm with 5 employees and a wait list. We specialized in digitizing historic property plans, courthouses, churches, libraries, anything that needed preservation. The city recognized our work in a local spotlight feature. The photo showed me in front of a massive blueprint, holding a digital tablet, smiling awkwardly. They called me a small business success story. I didn't think much of it until Daryl texted me that night. "Daryl, you clean up all right." Me: "You still got that vending machine?" Daryl: "Still broken. Still eats dollars." Some things didn't change. I bought a 2-bedroom condo in the city. Nothing extravagant, but it had clean white walls, a real dishwasher, and a door that locked with one click. I filled one room with old drafting tables, maps, and books about architectural history. I kept the other empty, just in case. I liked knowing I had a guest room, even if no one ever visited. My name was never legally removed from the farmhouse. I checked the county records. They'd sold it under a quitclaim deed. My name wasn't even mentioned. No one ever contacted me. 12 years passed. No phone calls. No messages. No birthday cards. Not even when I appeared in the business section of the regional paper under the headline, "Digital Archivist Brings New Life to Old Walls." I thought about writing them once, just to say, I made it. But every time I tried, I remembered that yellow slip of paper. "You'll manage." They were right. I did, but not the way they expected. I didn't just manage. I took their silence and built a life so precise, so ordered, so tightly controlled. There wasn't a corner they could ever crawl back into. And for a while, that was enough. It started with a ping on my phone, a notification from the podcast app one barely used. The episode title was dramatic: "Left Behind, When Family Walks Away." I almost ignored it. I had no idea they'd use my segment. Just figured the interview I'd recorded months ago with that small podcast in Minneapolis had been shelved. But they aired it. And somehow it spread. Within a week, I had over 300 emails. Some were supportive. Others were heartbreaking. A few were just weird. But one subject line made my hands go cold. "You're still our son. Sent from Mary Lane, 1731 at my mother." The message itself was short. Too short. "Mason, I listened to the podcast. I hope you're okay. You're still our son. Mom." I stared at it for a long time, rereading that one line. "You're still our son," like it was some kind of riddle. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to delete it without thinking. But my hand hovered over the screen, like it didn't belong to me anymore. 2 hours later, another email came. Subject: "Can we talk?" From Julia_Lane93 at my sister. "I just heard the episode. I didn't know. I thought you stayed behind because you wanted to. I've missed you. Please, can we talk?" I felt like the floor tilted. Julia. She'd been 12 when they left. I hadn't thought about her in years. Not on purpose. I'd blocked her out because it was easier that way. She was just a kid. I told myself she didn't know. That maybe she didn't have a choice. But I never really knew for sure. Until now. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed with my phone in one hand and a glass of water in the other, rereading both emails until the words felt meaningless. Still our son. Didn't know. They weren't apologies. Not really. Just feelers. Hooks in the water to see if I'd bite. I forwarded both messages to Lena, my therapist. She'd been helping me sort through the past, or what little I was willing to share of it, for the last 2 years. She was one of the few people who knew the full story. I added a subject line before hitting send: "They're back." Lena called the next morning. "I want you to take a week," she said. No responses. "Let the emotions settle." "I don't feel anything," I lied. She didn't argue. She just said, "Still, wait." So I waited. During the day, I worked. I filed contracts, returned client calls, reviewed CAD files. But at night, I read the emails again. I zoomed in on the phrasing, tried to decode the tone. Was my mother's message a reach for forgiveness, or a test to see if I was still angry? Was Julia telling the truth? That she didn't know? Sometimes I believed her. Other times, I pictured her climbing into the car, knowing I wasn't coming with them. I imagined her looking back through the rear window as the farmhouse got smaller. Maybe she cried. Maybe she didn't. By the end of the week, I still hadn't responded. But the silence didn't feel like power this time. It felt like holding my breath underwater, waiting to see who would resurface first. That was the thing no one tells you about abandonment. It doesn't just leave you behind. It waits. It lingers. And 12 years later, it still knows your name. I agreed to meet Julia at a coffee shop in Minneapolis. Neutral territory. Public enough to avoid drama. Quiet enough to hear the things I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. We hadn't spoken since the farmhouse. Since the night they vanished and left me with 4 words on a scrap of yellow paper. You'll manage. I got there 10 minutes early and took the seat in the corner, the one facing the door. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe someone I wouldn't recognize, someone completely different. But when she walked in, I knew her immediately. She looked older, sharper. Still had that same half-curly hair pulled back in a sloppy knot. But her walk was confident now, like someone who'd grown up without looking back. She spotted me and smiled, unsure. I didn't smile back. Hey, she said as she sat down, pulling off her coat. You look different. Older. I am older, I said. She looked down at the table, fiddling with a sugar packet. Thanks for meeting me. I didn't respond. After a beat, she said, I meant what I said in the email. I didn't know. About what really happened, I mean. I raised an eyebrow. You were 12. I know. But they told me you chose to stay. That you were going through something. That you didn't want to leave Tennessee. That I chose to stay in an empty house with no electricity and a mattress on the floor? She winced. I didn't question it. I should have, but I didn't. For a second, I just watched her. The guilt was there, real or rehearsed. I couldn't tell yet. 3 days, I said. I waited for you to come back. I thought maybe the truck broke down. Or someone got sick. I slept in an empty house because I thought family meant something. She looked like she might cry, but I didn't care. Not yet. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I nodded. Not an acceptance, just acknowledgement. I reached out, she said after a moment, because I heard the podcast, and I knew I couldn't keep pretending none of it happened. I remember the note. I remembered how weird it was, leaving like that. What did they tell you after? That you were doing fine. That you had a job. That you were stubborn, and you'd figure it out. She paused. I believed them. Of course you did. She took a breath, like she was building up to something. But also, I need to be honest. I leaned back. Go ahead. They're not doing well. Mom and Dad. The business they started tanked a couple years ago. They moved around. Dad's sick now, and they're losing the house. There it was. The hook. I didn't say anything. Just waited. I didn't reach out just to ask for money, she said quickly. I wanted to see you. I wanted to explain. But yeah, things are bad. I stared at her. You're doing well, Mason, she said softly. I saw the article. Your company. The condo. You've built a life. And maybe you could help. Just a little. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. I laughed, dry and sharp. There it is. Mason. I slept behind a junkyard for 6 months, I said, my voice flat. I ate food from vending machines and read library books to figure out how to get an ID. And now, 12 years later, you're here for a favor. No, she whispered. I'm here because I missed you. Sure. She looked desperate now. Please don't do this. I'm not doing anything, Julia. I'm just listening. She nodded slowly, her hands curled around her coffee cup like she needed something to anchor her. They weren't trying to hurt you. They just didn't want to drag me down, I said. Right? She didn't answer. But she didn't have to. The silence was enough. I stood up. Thanks for coming. She stood too. You're just going to walk away? I looked her in the eye. I did manage. Like the note said. But if they think I'm here to clean up the mess they made, they still don't know me. And with that, I walked out. My heart thudded against my ribs, slow and steady. Not angry. Not sad. Just done. The call came the next morning. Unknown number. Tennessee area code. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened to it twice. Mason, her voice said. It's your mother. That voice. It had aged. Softer, raspier, but still hers. I know I don't deserve this call, but I'm calling anyway. There was a pause, a shaky breath. We're in trouble, Mason. We've lost almost everything. The business fell apart years ago. Your father's been sick. Real sick. And now we're getting evicted from the apartment. We didn't know who else to call. Another pause. You've done well. We saw the article. We're proud of you. We need help now. Just to get back on our feet. She ended the message with, we miss you. Please call me back. An hour later, an email from my father came through. Subject, financial help needed. From Ronald Lane 54 at. There was no greeting. No warmth. Just numbers. Outstanding rent, $2,450. Medical bills, attached $3,610. Credit card debt, $5,120. Total needed, $11,180. No apology. No explanation. Just a spreadsheet. I stared at it like it was a business proposal, one I hadn't asked for. And then, I did what I always did when something rattled me. I forwarded both messages to Lena. Subject line, and here it is. She called within 10 minutes. I take it you didn't respond yet, she asked. Nope. What do you feel? I leaned back on my couch, staring at the ceiling, like I saw it coming a mile away. And still somehow, it pisses me off. It's not surprising, she said gently, but it's validating. I stayed silent. You've spent 12 years rebuilding your life from what they destroyed. And now that you've succeeded without them, they want a piece of it. But only because it benefits them. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Do you want to respond? Not yet, I said. I want to sit with it. She paused, then said, That's not nothing, Mason. That's control. That's growth. I didn't say anything for a while. I just stared at the message from my dad, still open on my phone. Bullet points and numbers. No, Mason, I'm sorry. No, we regret what we did. Just a clean, cold transaction. Like I was a bank. That night, I thought about the mattress on the floor, the trailer behind the junkyard, the half-eaten sandwich from the abandoned subway fridge. I remembered Daryl handing me bus fare without a word. Carol at the library sliding a book across the table on budgeting. I remembered surviving without them. And suddenly, the ask, this $11,180 request, didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a test. And this time, I had the answer. Not a single dollar. Not one. The message came from a name I didn't recognize at first, Kayla Jennings. It took a second before it clicked. Julia's wife. The subject line was short. I'd like to talk. Please. I stared at it for a while before opening it. Inside was just one sentence. I know they've been reaching out. If you have time, I think you deserve to know what they've said about you. I hesitated, then typed back. Sure. Tomorrow afternoon? She met me at a park near my condo, neutral, open. She brought their daughter, a curly-haired toddler in pink overalls who clung to her hand, but eyed me like I was some rare zoo animal. Kayla smiled politely. She won't bite. I might. I nodded, arms crossed. What is this about? She sat on the bench beside me, pulling out her phone. I'm not here on Julia's behalf, she said. She doesn't know I'm meeting you. But she will soon. I waited. Kayla took a breath. I didn't know anything about you until 2 years ago. I frowned. What do you mean? I mean, they never talked about you. Julia didn't even know the truth until she started digging on her own. And me? I was told you ran off. That you stole money. That you were unstable. Dangerous. She opened her phone, scrolled through some images, then handed it to me. Screenshots. Old Facebook posts. One from my mother. Hard day. Wish we could find our son. We've tried everything. Still no word. We pray every night. Another from my dad, shared with some concerned parent group. We even hired a private investigator. We just want closure. If anyone sees Mason Lane, tell him we love him. Tell him to come home. Bullshit. There were dozens of them. Posts stretching over years. Carefully spaced for maximum sympathy. All painting the same narrative, that I disappeared. That they were heartbroken. That they were searching. Kayla watched me silently as I flipped through the lies. I tried to breathe slowly. Tried not to let my jaw clench. But it didn't work. They made it sound like I was a missing person. They framed you, she said simply. It's how they kept the story neat. You didn't disappear. You ran away. You hurt them. They were the victims. She swiped to another folder. Photos of them at charity dinners. Church events. My mother with her hand on my sister's shoulder, tearfully talking about how hard it had been losing a son. I said nothing. They got sympathy, Kayla continued. They got money sometimes. Donated meals. Grocery cards. But what they really got was distance. Nobody ever questioned why they didn't file a report. I waited in that house for 3 days, I said quietly. Then I waited 12 years. Kayla nodded. Julia finally asked real questions after our daughter was born. When she started unpacking her childhood in therapy, things clicked. That's when she confronted them. And, your mom shut down. Your dad yelled. Julia started sleeping with a baseball bat under the bed. That made me turn. She's scared of them? She should be, Kayla said calmly. They've never hit her. But they have ways of reminding her who's in control. And now that she's siding with you, it's getting worse. I looked down at the toddler, who was now plucking dandelions like it was the only job that mattered. They're escalating, Kayla said. And it won't stop unless someone makes it stop. I exhaled through my nose. You believe me? I believe the podcast, she said. Then I found the truth. We sat there for a long moment, just breathing. Then I said, I'm not just protecting myself anymore. Kayla nodded. No, you're protecting us, too. And for the first time since all this started, I didn't feel like I was carrying it alone. The first message came the next morning. No sender. No signature. Nice niece. Cute school. Watch yourself. Attached was a blurry photo of Kayla and their daughter, taken from across the street. You could see the preschool sign in the background. You could see the timestamp. 3 hours earlier. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering. Not from panic. From rage. From knowing exactly who sent it. Even if the number was unlisted. I forwarded the message to Raj, my lawyer. Then I called Kayla. Her voice was already shaking when she picked up. I just got one too, she said. It's a picture of our mailbox. It said, "Still think he's a hero?" I didn't have to ask who he was. I got in touch with Julia immediately. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She just said, "Okay, I think we need to leave the house." That afternoon, I drove across town and picked them up. Kayla grabbed a few bags. Julia carried their daughter, one hand shaking as she locked the door behind them. They moved into my condo that night. I changed all the locks. Raj ordered a rush on the restraining order filings. We installed a security camera system within 24 hours. I added Julia and Kayla's names to the building's restricted list and updated the front desk with photos of both my parents. And just in time, because the next day, someone keyed Julia's car. Deep, jagged lines running across the driver's side. Every panel scraped. The word liar etched into the hood with something sharp. The police took the report. They said without a witness or camera footage, they couldn't do much. But they didn't argue when we showed them the threatening messages. 2 days later, someone broke into Julia and Kayla's home. Took nothing valuable. Just ransacked drawers. Stole a lockbox with old documents, birth certificates, marriage license, some of their daughter's school paperwork. Not theft. Not random. Intentional. Targeted. The judge granted temporary protective orders the next morning. Full restraining orders were scheduled for a hearing in 2 weeks. In the meantime, Raj drafted cease and desist letters. We sent them certified mail. I didn't expect them to work, but I wanted the paper trail. That night, I set up extra cameras in the hallway outside my condo unit. I slept on the couch, one eye open, phone on the table beside me. Julia barely spoke. Kayla sat awake with the baby pressed against her chest, scrolling through articles on stalking prevention. I hated how small my space felt, how nervous they were to even go outside. But I told them the truth. You're safe here. I won't let anything happen to either of you. Kayla looked up, eyes tired but steady. This isn't your fight. It is now, I said. They made it my fight the second they threatened her. The next day, I installed a second lock on the door and filed an official police complaint, not just for the threats, but for harassment, for intimidation, for criminal trespassing, if I could prove it. Raj was working behind the scenes, building a timeline. We had photos, texts, voicemails, the smear posts, the messages to Kayla, the car, the break-in. We weren't just defending anymore. We were preparing to go on offense. Because it was no longer about what they'd done to me 12 years ago. It was about what they were trying to do now. And I wasn't 17 anymore. I wasn't helpless. I had a home. I had the law. I had power. And this time, they were the ones out in the cold. I picked the cafe on purpose, quiet, well-lit, with security cameras outside and too many windows for anything dramatic. Raj advised me to bring a witness, but I didn't. I didn't need one. This wasn't about protection. This was about ending it. They walked in 5 minutes late. My mother spotted me first. Her smile was the same one I remembered from when I was a kid, warm, practiced, empty behind the eyes. My father followed, his gait slower than I remembered, a slight limp in his right leg. He didn't look at me. They sat down across from me without asking. "Thank you for meeting us," my mother said. Her voice was soft, cautious. "We're just glad to see you." I slid a manila envelope across the table. She blinked. "What's this?" "Evidence," I said. "Of everything." My father frowned. "What do you mean, evidence?" "You'll want to look at the first page," I said. She opened it slowly, hands trembling. The first sheet was a printed screenshot, a photo of their granddaughter outside her preschool with the timestamp. The next was the threatening text Kayla received. Then photos of Julia's car keyed with the word liar carved into the hood. The police report. The restraining orders. The certified cease and desist. I sat quietly as my mother's face went pale. "This isn't," she started, then stopped. My father skimmed the next few pages. "You think we did this?" I didn't answer. My mother looked up, her voice cracking. "We would never hurt her. Never." "But you hurt me," I said. 12 years ago. And now you've dragged a child into it." My father shook his head. "This is insane. We haven't done anything illegal." "Not yet," I said. "But you're circling the line. And this is your final warning." He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "Let me be clear. If I receive one more text, one more email, one more social media post pretending you're the victims, I will go public. Everything you see in that folder? It's already backed up. On 3 drives. In 3 states. And one of them is with a lawyer who would love nothing more than to expose a fabricated missing child story gone viral." My mother's lip trembled. "Mason. No more podcast comments under fake accounts. No more guilt. No more threats. You show up at Julia's house again, you go to jail. You post her daughter's photo online again, you get sued. And if either of you speaks to me again, in any form, I go to the press." My father stood up. "So that's it? You're blackmailing your own parents?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in my life, I felt nothing. No, I said. I'm done letting you control the narrative. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We were scared, Mason. We didn't know what to do back then. Your father was in debt, we thought. You thought I'd be fine on my own, I said. And you were right. I was. But you don't get to come back now and ask for a slice of what I built. He snorted. You think you're better than us now? No, I said quietly. I think I've always been better than what you gave me credit for. I stood, pushed in my chair, gathered the folder and tucked it under my arm. Don't contact me again. You're being cruel, my mother whispered. We're still your family. I paused, looked down at her. No, you're not. And I walked out, feeling nothing but the weight of the folder in my hands and the sudden, unmistakable lightness in my chest. For the first time since I was 17, I wasn't waiting for them to show up. I was walking away. For good. Life didn't go back to normal after that day because normal never existed. Not for me. But slowly, things settled into something I could live with. Julia and Kayla stayed at my condo for another few weeks while they found a new apartment across the river. Safer neighborhood. Top-rated preschool. No one in the building who shared a last name with us. I co-signed the lease, not because they asked, but because I wanted to. Because I could. We didn't talk much about our parents after that. Every now and then, something would slip, a memory, a comment, a question neither of us could answer. But mostly, we moved forward. They invited me over for dinners. I started picking up their daughter from preschool once a week. She called me Uncle Mace and refused to nap unless I read her the same 3 books in the exact same order. She didn't care that I didn't talk much. She didn't care that sometimes I sat a little too still, zoning out as if a piece of my brain was still trapped in that farmhouse. She just wrapped her arms around my neck and said, I like your face, like that settled everything. I didn't cry when I held her. Not really. But sometimes I had to blink a few extra times before I could read the last page out loud. A few months passed without a single message from our parents. Not a text. Not a voicemail. Not even a silent call from an unknown number. I checked my security cameras less and less. I stopped carrying the folder everywhere. It went into the bottom drawer of my desk, locked away. And then came her birthday. Julia wanted something small. Just family. The real kind. They came to my condo, a tiny herd of toddlers in tow, some mutual friends, Kayla's sister. We ordered pizza, set up balloons, and shoved presents into every corner of my living room. The noise was incredible. The kind of chaos that used to trigger something in me, nerves, edge, suspicion. But not that day. That day, it felt like home. I sat on the floor, legs crossed, helping her open a gift wrapped in glitter paper. It was a music box. Cheap, plastic, off-key. She loved it. Wound it up over and over until the little ballerina inside spun herself dizzy. Julia plopped down next to me, brushing crumbs off her jeans. She asked last week if you live in the mall, she said, smirking. I laughed. What? She thinks you own all the buildings. She calls you the city boss. I shook my head. She's not totally wrong. We both laughed, real, unforced. And in that moment, it hit me. The note. The 4 words that had followed me for over a decade. I'd kept them in my wallet, folded behind my ID, like a wound I couldn't stop picking at. You'll manage. It used to feel like a curse. Like a dare. But now, watching a 4-year-old clap for a plastic ballerina, hearing the sound of people I actually cared about filling the room with stories and snacks and stupid jokes, it felt like something else. Not a sentence. A prophecy. I stood up and walked to the kitchen. Pulled the note from my wallet one last time. Then I tore it in half. Dropped it in the trash? Kayla caught my eye from across the room. What was that? Just trash, I said. She smiled, nodded, and went back to frosting cupcakes with a plastic knife. Later that night, after everyone left, I turned off the lights and stood by the window for a while. The city buzzed below. Cars passed. Music played faintly from someone's balcony. And I stood there, not waiting, not watching. Just breathing. I didn't just survive them. I replaced them. With something better. Something real. Family I chose. Love I earned. And peace I built with my own hands. You'll manage. Yeah, I did more than that.